Welcome to Kiss and Chapters, where every story begins with a spark and ends with a swoon. If you love heart-fluttering romances, unexpected twists, and characters you'll root for, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so I can keep bringing you more sweet, emotional, and unforgettable stories. Let's fall in love with every chapter, together. Chapter 1. The Death That Wasn't the End. I died on a Tuesday. The last thing I remembered was the scent of medicine, cloying and thick, clinging to the air of my too-large bedroom. The curtains were drawn, but I could hear the winter wind howling outside, rattling the glass like an impatient visitor. Timothy hadn't come. Not that I expected him to. The maids whispered as they changed the linens, their voices hushed but not hushed enough. Poor Lady Melody. Not even her husband at her side. I wanted to laugh. Or maybe scream. But my lungs were too weak for either. Then darkness. And then sunlight. Blinding, golden, alive. I gasped, bolting upright in bed. My hands flew to my chest, expecting the sharp ache of illness, but there was nothing. Just the steady, strong beat of my heart. This wasn't my room. Oh, it was my old bedroom. The one I'd slept in before I married Timothy. Before my life became a quiet, aching misery. I scrambled from the bed, my bare feet hitting the cold floor. The mirror across the room showed a face I barely recognized. My own but younger. No shadows under my eyes. No pallor of sickness. A knock at the door. Lady Melody? A maid peeked in. Your mother asked me to remind you. The dressmaker arrives in an hour for your final wedding fitting. My wedding. Well, I turned to the calendar on the wall, my stomach twisting. 1 month. I had been sent back 1 month before my wedding to Timothy. The first time I met Timothy Ashford, Duke of Evermere, I had been hopelessly in love with him before he even spoke a word. Tall, with dark hair and eyes like a winter storm, he had been the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. And when he asked for my hand, I thought I was the luckiest woman in the world. I'd been a fool. Now, standing in the grand hall of my family's estate, I clenched my fists at my sides as the butler announced him. His Grace, the Duke of Evermere. There he was. Just as cold. Just as untouchable. Timothy's gaze swept the room before landing on me. He inclined his head, the barest hint of courtesy. Lady Melody. My name on his lips sent a traitorous shiver down my spine. I forced a curtsy, my voice flat. Your Grace. A flicker of something crossed his face. Confusion? Annoyance. But it was gone before I could decipher it. My mother, oblivious, beamed. We were just discussing the wedding arrangements, Your Grace. Melody has been so excited. I nearly choked. Timothy's eyes locked onto mine. Has she? I smiled, sharp as glass. Thrilled. His brow furrowed slightly. Good. Let him wonder. I spent the next week avoiding him. It wasn't difficult. Timothy had never been one for idle visits or courting gestures. In our first life, I'd been the one trailing after him, desperate for scraps of his attention. Well, now I made sure I was never where he expected me to be. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The Ridley Ball was the event of the season and my attendance was unavoidable. I wore a deep blue gown, not the pale pink I'd favored before, and kept to the edges of the room. Then I felt it. The weight of a stare. I turned and there he was. Timothy standing across the ballroom, his gaze fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. For a moment it was like no one else existed. Then he started toward me. Panic flared in my chest. I turned on my heel and slipped through the nearest door, escaping into the moonlit gardens. The cold air bit at my skin as I hurried down the path, my heart pounding. Running away, Lady Melody? I froze. Timothy's voice, low and smooth, came from behind me. I turned slowly. He stood a few feet away, his expression unreadable in the dim light. I lifted my chin. I needed air. From me. Yes. I said nothing. He stepped closer. You've been avoiding me. No. Liar. The word was soft, almost amused. I clenched my fist. Why do you care? For a long moment he was silent. Then, I don't know. The honesty in his voice startled me. Before I could respond, he reached out, his fingers brushing a loose curl behind my ear. My breath hitched. He'd never touched me like this before. Not in kindness. Timothy's gaze searched mine. Who are you? The question sent a chill through me. Did he sense it? That I wasn't the same Melody he'd known? I pulled away. No one you'd understand. And then I ran. That night I dreamed of my death. The fever. Pain. The crushing loneliness. I woke with a gasp, tears on my cheeks. The second chance, it was a gift. But it was also a curse. Because how could I trust that anything would be different? Timothy had never loved me. And yet, that look in his eyes in the garden. The way he touched me. Who are you? I pressed a hand to my chest, willing my heartbeat to slow. I wouldn't fall for him again. I couldn't. But as the sun rose, casting golden light across my room, I couldn't shake the terrifying thought. What if he was different this time too? Chapter 2. The Art of Avoidance. I had a plan. A simple, foolproof plan. Do not marry Timothy Ashford. If I could avoid him long enough, if I could make myself so disagreeable, so unappealing, he would call off the engagement himself. And so, when the dressmaker arrived for my final wedding fitting, I did not gush over the delicate lace or the way the silk whispered against my skin. I scowled. "It's too tight," I said, plucking at the bodice. The dressmaker blinked. "My lady, it's meant to be fitted. It's unbearable." I turned to my mother, who was watching me with growing concern. "I can't breathe. This won't do at all." My mother sighed. "Melody, darling, it's tradition." "I don't care." Silence. The dressmaker's hands stilled. Even the maids hovering in the corner froze. I had never spoken like this before. Not in this life, not in the last. Good. Let them think me difficult. Let him think me impossible. Timothy sent a letter the next morning. "Lady Melody, I understand you've taken issue with your wedding gown. If it displeases you, have it remade. Spare no expense." I stared at the note, my fingers tightening around the paper. Spare no expense. As if this were about money. As if he could buy my compliance. I crumpled the letter and tossed it into the fireplace, watching the flames devour his words. My maid Clara gasped. "Pie lady." I turned to her. "Tell the Duke I've reconsidered the engagement entirely." Her eyes widened. You can't mean that." "Oh, but I do." Clara hesitated, then curtsied and fled. I waited, my heart pounding. Would he come? Would he demand an explanation? Or would he simply let me go? He came. Of course he came. I was in the library, pretending to read, when the door swung open with a force that made the candles flicker. Timothy stood in the doorway, his expression dark. "Explain." I closed my book slowly. "Your Grace." What a surprise. He stepped inside, shutting the door behind him. "You're rejecting me." It wasn't a question. I lifted my chin. "Yes." "Why?" "Because you broke my heart. Because I died alone. Because I can't do it again." I shrugged. "I've changed my mind." His jaw tightened. "That's not an answer. It's the only one you'll get." For a long moment he just stared at me. Then, "Who are you?" The same question as before. I forced a laugh. "I'm Melody Farrow. Who else would I be? The Melody I knew would never." He cut himself off, exhaling sharply. "You've been avoiding me since the Ridley Ball." Astute observation. His eyes narrowed. What did I do? The question caught me off guard. What did I do? Not "why are you being difficult?" Not "this is unacceptable." What did I do? For the first time I hesitated. Then I steeled myself. "Nothing. You've done nothing." And that was the problem. The next morning, gossip spread like wildfire. "Lady Melody has rejected the Duke. The wedding is off." I should have been relieved. Instead I felt unsettled. And then, a letter arrived. Not from Timothy. From his mother. "Lady Melody, I demand an explanation. My son is beside himself. You will attend tea at Evermere Manor this afternoon. Duchess Eleanor Ashford." I groaned. Of all the people I'd hoped to avoid, Timothy's mother was at the top of the list. The Duchess had never liked me. And now she had every reason to despise me. Evermere Manor was as cold as I remembered. The Duchess sat across from me, her teacup poised perfectly in her hand. "Well," she said. "Speak." I took a slow sip of tea. "There's nothing to discuss." "Nothing to," she set her cup down with a sharp clink. "You humiliated my son." I almost laughed. Humiliated him? Timothy had humiliated me every day of our marriage by his indifference. "I've decided we wouldn't suit," I said simply. The Duchess's eyes flashed. And you didn't think to mention this before the contracts were signed? I'm mentioning it now. She leaned forward. Do you have any idea what you've done? Before I could answer, the door opened. Timothy stood there, his expression unreadable. Mother, he said. That's enough. The Duchess scowled. She's making a fool of you. Enough. Silence. Then, without another word, the Duchess stood and swept from the room. Timothy and I were alone. He didn't sit. Just looked at me. You didn't have to come. Your mother isn't someone you refuse. A flicker of something in his eyes. Amusement? No. She isn't. I set my teacup down. If you've come to convince me. I haven't. I blinked. Then why are you here? He stepped closer. Because I want to understand. There's nothing to understand. Isn't there? He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. My stomach dropped. It was a page from my diary. From the future. How? He unfolded it, his voice quiet as he read. I died today. Timothy never came. My breath caught. He looked up, his eyes burning into mine. Explain this. Chapter 3, The Diary. The world tilted. My diary. That entry. I had burned it, or at least I thought I had. In the haze of fever, I remembered scribbling those damning words, then tossing the book into the fireplace. But somehow a page had survived. And now it was in his hands. Timothy's grip on the paper was tight, his knuckles white. Explain this, he repeated, his voice low and rough. I forced myself to breathe. It's nothing. A foolish thought. A foolish thought? He stepped closer, holding the page between us like an accusation. I died today. Timothy never came. His jaw clenched. What the hell does that mean? The room felt too small. The air too thick. I needed to get out. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. It's none of your concern. He caught my wrist before I could leave. Like hell it isn't. His touch burned. I yanked my arm back, but he didn't let go. Let go. Not until you tell me the truth. I laughed, sharp and brittle. The truth? You wouldn't believe the truth. Try me. Our breaths were loud in the silence. His eyes, God, his eyes, were darker than I'd ever seen them, stormy with something I couldn't name. I swallowed. It was a dream. A dream. Yes. A nightmare. I wrote it down. That's all. He studied me for a long moment, then released my wrist. You're lying. I rubbed my arm, my pulse racing. Why would I lie? Because you've been lying since the moment I saw you again. Not at the Ridley Ball. Not last week. My breath hitched. No, impossible. But then he said quieter, you're not the only one who remembers. The floor dropped out from under me. Remembers. Not dreamed. Not imagined. Remembers. I swayed, bracing a hand against the table. You. I died 3 years after you. The words were like a blow. He died. In my past life I had been gone long before then. I had no idea what had become of him. But the way he said it, like it was a fact, like it was real, sent a chill through me. I shook my head. This is madness. Is it? He ran a hand through his hair, his composure cracking for the first time. I woke up a month ago, back in my own bed, back before any of it happened. And then I saw you at the ball and you... He exhaled sharply. You looked at me like you hated me. I did. I had. But now. Now I didn't know what to feel. I turned away, my voice barely above a whisper. Why are you telling me this? Because I need to know if it was real. I closed my eyes. It was. Silence. Then a ragged breath. God. I turned back to find him sitting heavily in a chair, his face in his hands. The great Duke of Evermere, brought to his knees by the truth. I should have felt vindicated. Dad, I just felt tired. We didn't speak for a long time. The fire crackled in the hearth, the only sound in the room. Finally, Timothy lifted his head. His eyes were red-rimmed. I didn't know. Know what? That you were. He swallowed. That you died alone. The words hung between us, heavy and suffocating. I crossed my arms, holding myself together. It doesn't matter now. Of course it matters. No. I cut him off, my voice sharp. It doesn't. Because that life is over. And I won't repeat it. He flinched. Melody. I won't marry you. The words were final. Absolute. He stared at me, his expression unreadable. Then slowly he nodded. I understand. I expected relief. Said my chest ached. I left Evermere Manor in a daze. The carriage ride home was a blur. He remembers. He died too. He knows. Changed everything. And nothing. Because no matter what he claimed now, no matter what regrets he carried, the past couldn't be undone. I wouldn't let myself forget that. The next morning a letter arrived. Not from Timothy. From my father. Melody. The Duke has formally withdrawn his suit. The wedding is off. Do not embarrass this family further. I crumpled the note in my fist. It was what I wanted. So why did it hurt so much? Chapter 4. The Withdrawal. The news spread faster than fire in dry grass. The Duke of Evermere has ended his engagement to Lady Melody Farrow. By noon the first vultures arrived, concerned friends and venomous society matrons, all feigning sympathy while their eyes glittered with delight. Such a shame, Lady Henshaw murmured over tea, her smile sharp. Though one wonders what you did to drive him away. I sipped my tea, my voice flat. I exist. The room fell silent. My mother, pale with humiliation, excused us both. That night I dreamed of the past. Timothy's back as he walked away from our marriage bed. The endless silence of Evermere Manor. The way the servants whispered, "Poor thing. The Duke hasn't visited her in months." Asterisk. I woke gasping, my nightgown damp with sweat. Moonlight spilled through the window, painting the room in silver. I was free. So why did it feel like I'd lost something? A week passed. Then I filled my days with books, walks, and pointedly ignoring the gossip. But no matter how I busied myself, my thoughts always circled back to him. Had he regretted his decision? Did he even care? Then on a rain-soaked afternoon, Clara burst into my room, her cheeks flushed. The Duke is here. My heart lurched. What? He's downstairs, he asked for you. I nearly dropped the book in my hands. Why would he come now? Hadn't we said everything? Timothy stood in the drawing room, his coat dripping rainwater onto the rug. He turned as I entered, his gaze locking onto mine. You look well. Why? I hadn't slept properly in weeks. Why are you here? I asked. He exhaled, running a hand through his damp hair. I couldn't stay away. The raw honesty in his voice sent a tremor through me. I clenched my fist. You were the one who left. Because you asked me to. He stepped closer. But I can't. God, Melody, I can't do this again. Do what? Lose you. The words hung between us, heavy and aching. I wanted to scream. To cry. To believe him. Instead I whispered, you never had me to begin with. He left without another word. But the next morning, a single white rose arrived on my doorstep. Attached was a note. I'm not giving up. I buried my face in my hands and wept. Chapter 5. The White Rose. The rose was a mistake. I told myself this as I placed it in a vase by my window, its petals already beginning to unfurl. A mistake because now I looked at it every morning when I woke and every night before I slept. A mistake because it made me hope. And hope was dangerous. 3 days passed before the next one arrived. Another white rose, this time with a book. The Song of Everlasting Sorrow. A tragic romance I'd loved in my past life. One I'd never mentioned to this Timothy. My fingers trembled as I opened the cover. A slip of paper fluttered out. You once told me this was your favorite. I should have remembered sooner. I slammed the book shut. How dare he? How dare he remember now when it was too late? The roses kept coming. One every morning, each with a note that carved another crack in my resolve. You hate the rain. I'll bring an umbrella next time. You take your tea with honey, not sugar. You hum when you think no one is listening. I wanted to throw them all into the fire. Instead, I lined them up on my windowsill, their petals soft as whispers. On the 7th day, the rose wasn't delivered by a servant. Timothy stood on my doorstep, the flower in his hand, his coat damp with morning mist. I froze in the doorway. You're relentless, I said. He smiled just barely. I told you I wouldn't give up. I should have shut the door. Instead, I stepped aside. The drawing room had never felt so small. Timothy sat across from me, his gaze tracing my face like he was memorizing it. Why are you doing this? I asked. Because I owe you a lifetime of roses. The words stole my breath. In our past life he'd never given me flowers. Not once. I curled my hands into fists. It's too late for grand gestures. Is it? He leaned forward, his voice rough. Melody, I have years to make up for. Years of neglect, of blindness. God, I didn't even realize you were sick until it was too late. The raw pain in his voice made my chest ache. You weren't there, I whispered. I know. His hand twitched as if he wanted to reach for me. And I'll spend every day of this life proving I should have been. I looked away, my vision blurring. What if I can't forgive you? Then I'll keep trying. A tear slipped down my cheek. He caught it with his thumb, his touch unbearably gentle. I love you, he said, simple as a vow. In every life, in every world, I love you. I broke. I kissed him. Or maybe he kissed me. It didn't matter. All that mattered was the way his arms wrapped around me, the way he whispered my name like a prayer, the way the past finally fell away. When we pulled apart, he pressed his forehead to mine. Marry me, he breathed. I laughed, wet and shaky. We've already been through this. Not like this. He cupped my face. Not without love. I closed my eyes and said yes. Chapter 6. The Engagement Reforged. The second engagement announcement sent society into chaos. The Duke of Evermere and Lady Melody Farrow have reconciled. The same matrons who had pitied me last week now whispered behind their fans, their eyes sharp with envy. Even my own mother stared at me over breakfast, her teacup hovering midair. You're certain this time? She asked. I traced the rim of my cup, remembering the way Timothy's hands had trembled when he held me. Yes. She exhaled. Thank God. I almost laughed. If only she knew. Timothy arrived at noon, his carriage laden with gifts. Books, chocolates, a shawl the color of dawn. You're spoiling me, I said as he pressed a kiss to my knuckles. Good. His thumb brushed the inside of my wrist, sending a shiver up my spine. You deserve to be spoiled. In our past life he'd never brought me gifts. Never touched me so freely. The difference was dizzying. My father cleared his throat. Your Grace, might I have a word? Timothy's smile faded. Of course. I watched them disappear into the study, my stomach twisting. What if my father said something to change his mind? What if Timothy regretted this already? But when he emerged, his eyes found mine instantly, warm and sure. Ready? He murmured, offering his arm. For what? I wanted to ask. That I took it. He took me to Evermere Manor. Not the glittering ballrooms or stifling parlors, but the library, a cavernous room I'd rarely been allowed to enter before. Sunlight streamed through the windows, gilding the shelves of leather-bound books. This was always your favorite place, I said softly. It will be yours too. He led me to a corner where two armchairs sat facing each other, a small table between them. I had these brought in. For us. The word curled around my heart like smoke. I ran my fingers over the velvet upholstery. You've thought of everything. Not everything. He stepped closer. I still don't know your favorite color. Blue. Your favorite season. Autumn. The name of your first pet. I laughed. A cat named Puddle. He grinned, boyish and bright. See? I have years of questions left. And just like that, the last of my resistance crumbled. That night we sat in our chairs, knees touching as I read aloud from a book of poetry. Timothy listened with his eyes closed, his fingers laced through mine. You're happy, he murmured when I paused. I studied the way the firelight danced across his face. I'm scared. His eyes flew open. Of me. Of this. I squeezed his hand. What if it's not enough? What if we... No. He leaned forward, his voice fierce. We won't repeat the past, Melody. I swear it. I wanted to believe him. But the fear lingered, a shadow at the edge of the light. The next morning I woke to shouting. I hurried downstairs to find Timothy in the foyer, his face thunderous. You will not speak to her, he snarled. Across from him stood Lady Isabella Thorne, his former mistress. She turned to me with a smile like a knife. The dying bride returns. The world went silent. Timothy moved first. Get out. But Isabella's gaze never left mine. He'll tire of you again. Men like him always do. Then she was gone, leaving only the scent of roses and poison behind. Timothy reached for me. Melody. I stepped back. The past wasn't dead. It was waiting. Chapter 7. The Poisoned Thorn. Lady Isabella Thorne had been a spectre haunting my first engagement. Timothy had never loved her, not truly, but she had been a constant presence in those early years. A blade slipped between my ribs at every ball, every dinner. His Grace and I shared such laughter last season, she would sigh, her eyes glinting as I stiffened. But of course he must attend to his wife now. And now she was back. I stood frozen in Evermere's foyer, my pulse roaring in my ears. Timothy's hands were fists at his sides. "She's gone," he said roughly. She knew. The words clawed up my throat. About how I died. His face darkened. She heard rumors. Nothing more. Rumors. The kind that painted me as a sickly, pitiable creature. The kind Timothy had once ignored. I wrapped my arms around myself. Why is she here? Because she's a viper. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. But she means nothing. Not to me. Not ever. I wanted to believe him. But in my past life he had let her whispers go unchallenged. The nightmares returned that night. Fever dreams, sweat slick and suffocating. Isabella's laughter. Timothy's turn back. The crushing weight of my own lungs failing. I woke with a gasp, my nightgown clinging to my skin. Moonlight spilled through the window, illuminating a figure in the doorway. Timothy. He was at my side in an instant, his hands cool against my flushed cheeks. Another dream? I nodded, trembling. Without a word, he gathered me against his chest, his heartbeat steady under my ear. "Breathe," he murmured. "Just breathe." I clung to him like a lifeline. For the first time I wondered, had he woken like this too? Haunted by a past only we remembered? Isabella struck again at Lady Henshaw's garden party. "How fortuitous that your illness hasn't returned," she mused, plucking a rose from the bush beside us. "Though I suppose some afflictions are slower this time." The other ladies tittered behind their fans. I forced a smile. "How kind of you to fret over my health." "Oh, I fret over everyone close to his Grace." She leaned in, her perfume cloying. "After all, someone must." A shadow fell over us. "Lady Isabella." Timothy's voice was ice. "You're leaving." She blinked up at him, all false innocence. "But we were just now." The garden fell silent as she left, her skirts hissing against the grass. Timothy's hand found mine, his grip tight. "You're shaking." I hadn't even realized. That night I found Timothy in his study, a half-empty glass of brandy in hand. "You're avoiding me," I said softly. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I'm angry." "At Isabella?" "At myself." He set the glass down with a clink. "I should have stopped her years ago. I should have." His voice broke. "Christ, Melody, I should have seen you." The raw pain in his words undid me. I crossed the room and took his face in my hands. "You see me now." His eyes searched mine. "Is it enough?" I kissed him instead of answering. The letter arrived at dawn. "Lady Melody. Meet me at the old chapel at noon. Come alone or the world learns how desperate you truly are to keep him." I crumpled the note, my stomach churning. But if I didn't go? I slipped out without telling Timothy. Some ghosts needed to be laid to rest alone. Chapter 8. The Chapel. The old chapel stood at the edge of the estate, its stone walls choked with ivy. I stepped inside, the scent of damp wood and candle wax wrapping around me. Dust motes swirled in the slanted sunlight, catching on the frayed edges of pews that hadn't been used in decades. How poetic. Isabella's voice slithered through the shadows. She emerged from behind the altar, her smile sharp as a blade. "The dying wife returns to God's house. Are you here to pray, or to beg?" I didn't flinch. "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted." She trailed a finger along the rotting wood. "Him." A laugh escaped me, harsh, unladylike. "Then you've wasted your time. Timothy isn't a prize to be won." "No." She tilted her head. "Then why are you here?" The truth sat bitter on my tongue. "Because I'm afraid you're right." Instead I said, "To tell you to stay away from us." Isabella sighed as if disappointed. Still playing the brave little wife. "Tell me, does he know you're here?" My silence was answer enough. Her grin widened. "Oh, Melody. You've just proven everything I've ever said about you." The chapel doors crashed open. Timothy stood framed in the sunlight, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. Melody. Isabella's laugh rang out like a bell. Right on time. He didn't even glance at her. Striding forward, he caught my face in his hands, his thumbs brushing my cheeks. Are you hurt? I shook my head, my throat tight. Isabella's smile faltered. Timothy turned to her, his voice deadly quiet. If you ever come near her again, I will ruin you. You wouldn't dare. Try me. For the first time, fear flickered in her eyes. Then she was gone, her footsteps echoing like a retreat. The ride back to Evermere was silent. Timothy's grip on the reins was white-knuckled, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. I stared at the passing trees, guilt curdling in my stomach. You followed me. Of course I did. The words were bitten off. Did you really think I wouldn't? I thought. My voice cracked. I thought I had to face her alone. He pulled the carriage to a sudden stop, the horses stamping in protest. When he turned to me, his eyes were blazing. You don't have to face anything alone. Not anymore. The dam broke. Tears spilled over, hot and relentless. I'm scared, I whispered. Every day I'm so scared this is all a dream, that I'll wake up back in that bed dying and you'll be. His mouth crashed into mine. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, bruising, a kiss that tasted of salt and fury and stay with me. When we broke apart, he pressed his forehead to mine. This is real, he breathed. We're real. I clung to him like a prayer. That night we didn't sleep. We sat by the fire, wrapped in the same blanket, trading stories like secrets. I hated the way you slurped your tea, I admitted. He snorted. I hated how you organized my books by color. You what? Alphabetical, Melody. Alphabetical. Laughter bubbled up, bright and unexpected. For the first time the past didn't feel like a weight. Felt like a bridge. At dawn I found Isabella's note still crumpled in my pocket. I tossed it into the fire, watching the edges blacken and curl. Timothy's arms slid around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. Ready? I turned in his embrace, my hands framing his face. Yes. This time I meant it. Chapter 9. The fever returns. The first cough came on a Tuesday. A small thing, barely noticeable, just a tickle in my throat as I arranged white roses in the library. But the sound made Timothy freeze mid-sentence, his book slipping from his fingers. Melody. I waved him off. Dust. His face was pale as parchment. We both knew. By week's end the fever took hold. It was crueler this time, a fire that raced through my veins instead of the slow creep I remembered. The doctors came and went, their murmurs hushed and hopeless. Consumption. No cure. Prepare. Timothy barred them from the room. Get out, he snarled. When the door closed, he sank to his knees beside my bed, his hands clutching mine. Not again, he whispered. Please, not again. I wanted to comfort him. To promise I'd stay. Instead I coughed scarlet onto my sleeve. Memories blurred, cold cloths on my brow, bitter tonics forced between my lips. Timothy's voice begging me to hold on, just hold on. Then a moment of clarity. Moonlight through the curtains. The scent of roses. Timothy asleep in the chair beside me, his face gaunt with exhaustion. I reached for him. My fingers passed through empty air. You have to choose. A woman's voice, soft as snowfall. I turned to find a figure wreathed in light, her features shifting like smoke. Who are you? My voice echoed strangely as if we stood in a vast hall. The one who gave you this chance. She tilted her head. But time is a river, not a circle. You cannot linger here forever. The meaning crashed over me. I'm dying. Yes. And if I choose to go back? Her smile was sorrow itself. Then you live. But the cost. Tell me. She pressed a hand to my chest. You forget. Everything. Him. The word was a knife. I woke gasping. Timothy jolted upright, his hands cradling my face. Melody. The fever was gone. But so was the memory of the woman's voice. All that remained was the crushing certainty that something had been lost. Something precious. Timothy crushed me to his chest, his tears hot against my neck. You came back, he choked. I buried my face in his shoulder. Why does it feel like I left something behind? Chapter 10. Petals in full bloom. The roses were the first clue. White petals filled my bedroom, Vases on every surface, their scent thick as honey. I reached for one, my fingers brushing its silken edge, and a strange ache bloomed in my chest. Why does this hurt? Timothy appeared in the doorway, his face drawn. When he saw me touching the flower, his breath caught. Do you remember? He asked, voice rough. Remember what? Something shattered behind his eyes. The doctors called it a miracle. The fever broke against all odds. But Timothy watched me with a quiet devastation, as if I were a ghost. At breakfast, I found a book of poetry by my plate. The Song of Everlasting Sorrow. This was my favorite, I said, surprised. His fork clattered against his plate. You remember that? Of course. I frowned. Shouldn't I? He excused himself without another word. The gaps were small at first. I couldn't recall the name of Timothy's favorite horse. I forgot we'd visited the seaside last summer. But then, who is Isabella? I asked, glancing at a letter he quickly tucked away. Timothy went very still. No one. She seems to think otherwise. Melody. He knelt before me, his hands trembling. Look at me. Do I feel like a stranger? I pressed my palm to his cheek. No. Then trust me. His voice broke. Please. The dreams came in fragments. The apple. A woman's voice. A choice. I woke crying, though I didn't know why. Timothy gathered me close, his lips pressed to my hair. It's all right, he whispered. I remember enough for both of us. And then I knew. I forgot him. Not entirely. Not his face, his touch, his love. But the years we'd lived before. Bang. The second chance. Gone. I clutched his shirt. Tell me. So he did. We sat in the garden as the sun set, his hand warm in mine. I died, I said slowly. Yes. And you did too. Yes. And we came back. His thumb brushed my knuckles. Yes. I looked at the roses, their petals etched in gold. I gave up my memories to stay. You did. A breeze stirred the flowers, carrying their scent between us. I turned to him. Do you regret it? Timothy cupped my face, his eyes brighter than the dawn. Never. And when he kissed me, it tasted like a beginning. Epilogue. 5 years later. Our daughter was born in spring. She had Timothy's eyes and my laugh, and when she placed a tiny white rose in my hand, something deep inside me clicked. Mama, she cooed. Timothy's arms wrapped around us both, his voice soft in my ear. Welcome back. And just like that, I remembered. Bonus chapter. The letters. I found the box on a rainy afternoon. Timothy was away at Parliament, and I had taken to exploring Evermere's attic, a place I'd rarely visited in either lifetime. Beneath a dust-covered trunk, my fingers brushed against polished oak. The box was small, unassuming. But the moment I lifted the lid, the scent of rosemary and ink washed over me, his scent. Inside lay stacks of letters, each sealed with a familiar crest. All addressed to me. All never sent. Dearest Melody, it has been 3 days since you woke without remembering me. 3 days since I realized the cost of your survival. I write this knowing you may never read it, but I cannot stop myself. You smiled at me this morning over breakfast. It was the same smile you gave when we first met. Bright, curious, unburdened. I should be grateful. Instead, I am selfish. I miss the way you used to look at me, like you knew every secret I'd ever kept. Come back to me. My hands trembled. I reached for another. Melody, you asked about the roses today. I nearly told you everything. But how could I? You're happy now. Truly happy. Not the fragile joy we clawed from our second chance, but something lighter. Something whole. Who am I to shatter that? Still, I catch myself waiting. When you hum absent-mindedly in the library, I hold my breath, praying you'll remember it was our song. When you touch my scars, I ache for you to recall how I got them. You don't. I love you anyway. A tear splattered the page. The last letter was dated yesterday. My love. Our daughter was born at dawn. When you held her, you whispered, she has your eyes. Do you know how many times you've said those words? And how many lifetimes? But today you said it differently. Today your voice caught. Today you remembered. I saw it in your face when she handed you the rose. That flicker. That knowing. Welcome home. Forever yours. Timothy. The box slipped from my lap as the door creaked open. He stood there, rain glistening in his hair. You kept these, I whispered. Timothy crossed the room in 3 strides, his hands cradling my face. I would have written 1,000 more. I pressed my forehead to his. Read them to me. And so he did.